In this lecture, we are talking about the parasitic adaptations of Fasciola hepatica. Now, students, as we know that the Fasciola hepatica is an endoparasite, it is living inside the host. Now, the host can be the sheep, it can be a pig, it can be any of the cattle in which it is living. So, it has to go with the internal environment of the host. It will live inside the internal environment of that particular host. So for coping up with the adverse conditions of the internal environment, it has got some adaptations. Now we are talking about the various morphological and physiological adaptations in Fasciola hepatica. So while living on in those conditions, this animal has undergone a great modifications, both morphological and physiological. Now these adaptations, they are very important for its existence in the host and for completing the life cycle. So we have got various parasitic adaptations in Fasciola. So we'll be taking up one by one. So if we take the very first adaptation, this is the presence of the tegument. So students, this is the outermost layer of the body wall of Fasciola hepatica. So this is a thick kind of wall and it is permeable to water, but it is resistant to the enzymes of the host. So this is a very important thing. So it can help to prevent the Fasciola hepatica from lysis through the enzymes of the host. So it is protective in nature, and this is very important layer as per the parasitic adaptations are concerned. Now after this, if we take up the second adaptation, this is the presence of some locomotory organs. So these organs, they are for the locomotion inside the host. So basically these locomotory organs, they are absent in the adult worm or the adult Fasciola hepatica. As we have seen in the body wall that it has got only two types of muscles, the circular and the longitudinal. So when the circular muscles, they contract, they can make the body thin to some extent, and whenever the longitudinal muscles, they contract, they make the body short. So with these kinds of movements, the adult can move inside the body of the host. But if we talk about the cilia in case of Miracidium larva, and if we take the condition of the presence of tail in case of Cercaria larva, these are also the locomotory organs. So that means the locomotory organs, they are mainly present in the larval forms. So we can give the example of, first of all, the Miracidium, and second example can be given of the Cercaria larva, where the tail is present. Now if we consider the third kind of the adaptation in case of Fasciola, it is the presence of oral sucker. So this is the sucker which is present around the mouth. So this particular sucker, it helps for the sucking of the food, and at some times it is also helping in the attachment of this particular animal to the host walls. So this is solving both the purposes of sucking of the food or the food intake or the ingestion of the food and the attachment. So this is again a very important adaptation. The next adaptation is the presence of the acetabulum. Acetabulum is the ventral sucker which is present on the ventral side of the Fasciola hepatica. The acetabulum has got no mouth inside it. It is also a sucker but without mouth. So it is only and only for the anchorage or the attachment to the host, and it is again very important for the attachment purposes. Next adaptation can be the presence of spinules. So if you go by the body wall of fasciula hepatica, so you may recall the presence of the backwardly directed spinules in the tegument of this animal. So these spinules, they are again for the attachment, for the anchorage. The next adaptation is the presence of the suctorial pharynx. Suctorial refers to the capacity to suck the food. So when we had discussed the digestive system of fasciula hepatica, we have discussed a muscular pharynx. So this pharynx has got a number of radial muscles which when relax they can suck in the food. So that's why it is called as a suctorial pharynx. So this is a very good, you can say, morphological adaptation in case of fasciula. So if we take the next kind of adaptation, that can be the presence of the branched intestine. So if I take the next form or the next adaptation, this is the branched intestine. So intestine is present with the two limbs. So it is branched into two limbs, and these limbs again ramify to form the caecae or the intestinal caecae. So these are present only to increase the surface area for the absorption. So branched intestine, it serves two purposes. Number one, it is for proper absorption, and second, it is for the proper distribution of the food. As there is no particular circulatory system present in this animal, so this is again for the proper distribution of the food. The next adaptation is the presence of the sense organs. And if you take the example of the Miracidium larva, it has got exceptional sensory organs. So Miracidium has got a brain, it has got eye spots. So these are exceptionally good in sensing the presence of the Limnia snail in the pond. Next adaptation can be the presence of anaerobic respiration. So this is a kind of physiological adaptation in case of fasciula hepatica. So here, this animal, it goes for the anaerobic type of respiration, which is helping fasciula for living inside the host where there is no oxygen. So if it is living inside the bile ducts or the intestine of the host, so there is no oxygen present over there. So it has to go with the anaerobic type of respiration. So this is a very good adaptation for this parasite. Now if we talk about the next adaptation, this is related to the reproductive system. So the adaptation will be that it has got a well developed reproductive system. So this is a very, very important kind of adaptation. This may be physiological also. So this animal, the Fasciula hepatica, can produce a very large number of eggs. So a single fluke in its whole life cycle or whole life, it can produce near to like 2 lakhs of eggs. So a single fluke can produce 2 lakhs of eggs in its life. So it has like why it is making this much of eggs in its life? Because there is a great mortality rate in the life cycle of the Fasciola hepatica. So if it is producing lakhs of eggs, only some of the eggs may find the next host and they may go to the next sheep. So that's why, due to this great mortality rate, this animal has developed a large number of eggs for ensuring the next generations. So this is uh, that's why we call it as a well developed reproductive system. The next adaptation is the presence of shells around the zygotes. So students, this is again a very important physiological adaptation, that this animal forms shells around their zygotes. So in the reproductive physiology we have seen that the zygotes, they are gathered around by the yolk cells, and then a capsule is formed over it, which is forming the egg capsule, which is going into the uterus and gets stored over there. So to ensure the proper development of the zygote, shells are formed outside it. So the shells, they are also helping to cope up the unfavorable conditions, and whenever the operculum or the cap of this shell opens, only then the miracidium larva will come out of these shells. So that's how the shell is helping in ensuring the next generation, or it is helping to produce the next generations in a closed environment and in safe conditions. The next adaptation is the presence of hermaphroditism. That means the presence of the male and the female reproductive systems inside one animal. So to be a hermaphrodite is again a kind of adaptation. So there may be a case that we have got a male and a female Fasciola hepatica, but no, the Fasciola hepatica, it is in evolution, it has developed a hermaphrodite kind of condition. So it ensures self-fertilization, and even it is having the cross fertilization. But here, if the Fasciola hepatica, it fails to reproduce in a cross manner, it can ensure a self-fertilization. So as we have discussed in the fertilization types, so it can ensure for a fertilization with the self type. So a self type of fertilization is also a kind of parasitic adaptation. So that can be another, you can say, an adaptation, the presence of self fertilization method. So these are some of, you can say, the parasitic adaptations which are found in the Fasciola hepatica, and these are for the survival of the species of this animal. So it has developed these adaptations for its survival and for its existence and for ensuring the next generations in a very safe manner.